Aloha everyone. So in this lecture we're going to talk about prime movers, also called agonists, antagonists, synergists, and fixator muscles. Now, first of all, the thing is that these are also involved with joint movements. So if you don't know what joint movements are, you might want to go back to the joint movement lectures to get the basics of things like flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction. So here's the muscular system tip. So things that muscles pull individually, they pull, they don't push. But in this case, if there's a muscle that does some sort of movement and action, then there is at least one muscle that does the opposite. Now, again, these are my unofficial tips, and these are just I think are useful when you're first starting out studying the muscular system. All right, here's an example of the opposite. So if something does a muscle does one action, then there's something that undoes it. So here's our elbow joint, or humeral ulnar joint. I got mixed up there. But yeah, humeral ulnar joint and flexion. So flexion is going to decrease the angle at this joint. So flexion is going to make this angle here smaller. So what muscle does that? Well, there's multiple muscles, but in this example, we're just going to say the biceps brachii. So flexors are here at the front of your arm if you're talking about the elbow joint. And that makes sense because if you want to make this angle between your forearm and upper arm smaller, maybe you want to kind of have these muscles here shortened so that they're kind of bringing this forearm closer toward your upper arm over there. Now extension, notice that this is going to straighten out this elbow joint. And how do you do that? Well, notice that this is the triceps brachii. And when you contract the triceps brachii, it's going to pull this point of the elbow closer toward the shoulder over here. And by doing that, this is going to shorten this and bring this process right here on your elbow closer and up here, thereby straightening out this elbow joint over there. So this is a classic example of the opposites tip, where you have flexors on one side and extensors on the other side. So what we see is that not only do they undo each other's movements, but notice that the flexors are anterior of the arm and the extensors are on the posterior of the arm. So that's a common pattern you see with a lot of pairs of opposite movements. So then we have to do some vocabulary. So things that you may hear, if you've taken a basic English or literature class, you may have heard things like, oh, you have the protagonist and you have antagonist of a story. Well, there's no protagonist in terms of muscles, but there is something called a prime mover or agonist. And just like how a protagonist in a story is the main character, that is the prime mover or agonist. They are the main character. They are the main force that is contributing to a movement. So there could be multiple muscles that are contributing to a movement, but the one that has the most force and contributes the most, the main one, that's the prime mover, also called agonist. Now, just like in the story, what opposes the agonist and what opposes the protagonist? Well, there's the antagonist. So this is where the opposite roles come in handy. And why am I showing these emojis? Because I don't want to make the mouse upset. But antagonist, so this is going to oppose the prime mover, the agonist. It's going to oppose the main character. So just like our biceps and triceps, if we're talking about the biceps as a prime mover or agonist, then the triceps, which undoes it and counters that movement, is going to be antagonist. Now synergists, and these are ones that, so they're not the main character, but they help the main character move things along in the right direction. So sometimes you have other muscles that help with the movement. They're not the primary force, but they might be along the same direction, or they might contribute in the same direction, but not as strong as the prime mover. So those are synergists. They still help, and they're still there to help with the movement. They're just not the main character. And then fixators. So fixators, kind of like in the story, that you have some people that are there just to kind of support. They don't actually contribute directly to things, but they're there in the background to help things along. And fixators, these might not contribute directly to the same direction as that main force or the same main movement that is produced by the prime mover, but what they do is they help to stabilize things. So they help because the thing is that sometimes you can have a movement, but if you have all your other muscles loose, it's going to make that movement harder or less efficient. So fixators are there to kind of help stabilize that prime mover so it can be more efficient in its action. All right, so here's an example. So starting position, dumbbells at the side, and this guy's going to lift it up and lift these dumbbells out to the side. So is that abduction or adduction? So this would be abduction because you're taking the arms away from the midline, so starting here, and arms away from the midline, so this would be abduction at the shoulder. Now the prime mover or antagonist here would be the deltoids, right here. So when these contract, they start off longer here, but when they pull here, these are going to shorten and draw the rest of the arm up toward the sides, if you're doing this type of movement. And the antagonist, so the pec major and latissimus dorsi. So this would be pec majors in the front, so your chest muscles, and also the lats would be your back muscles. And so when you contract them at the same time, well, if you contract your pec major, it's not going to really help your arm go like this. It's actually going to draw your shoulder closer toward your midline right here. And you also have that with the latissimus dorsi. It's also going to pull toward the inside, but not only pull toward the inside, they also pull down, and if we're talking about your arm movement at the shoulder. Synergists include like supraspinatus, so the one on the back of your shoulder blade. This also helps with the so synergists, again, they're not the main mover, they're not the main character, but supraspinatus, if you have that, it's going to help pull this up here. So it's not going to be the main force, but it helps with the overall, it helps makes the movement more easier for or I should say stronger with the deltoids. And then fixators, there are many fixators, but also rhomboids. They are not going to contribute directly to this abduction, but these are muscles on the back of your body that help to kind of stabilize the joint so that it can help make this overall movement easier. Now, I also say among many because at this level in my course, I don't expect you to memorize these lists because sometimes there could be literally dozens of these fixators and synergists. Don't worry about it for this course. Now, shoulder adduction, what we have is that you're going from here. So again, this was abduction, and adduction, adduction, would be starting out here and bringing it toward the midline. So you're adding your limbs toward your midline. So the prime movers of that are your pec major and lat dorsi. So what happens is, like, when you contract these at the same time, these are going to pull up to close your shoulder, or I should say pull your arm at the shoulder closer toward your body and the front with the pec major, and the lats, these are going to pull in the back, and you have them both at the same time. They kind of balance each other out and they help to pull. So sometimes you have multiple prime movers when they're kind of like, okay, neither of them is like directly helping with this, but these are the main. Sometimes they share the spotlight. Now with the antagonists are the deltoids. This is going to undo the movement. Synergists, we have the infraspinatus below the spine of your scapula and your teres minor, which is also part of the rotator cuff muscles. And fixators, sometimes things can be both synergists and fixators, in that they help with that, like stabilize the overall movement. And so shoulder abduction, but what we know between shoulder abduction, abduction, and shoulder adduction, adduction, is that notice that the prime mover and agonist and the antagonist, well, in the abduction, the prime mover was the deltoids, the antagonists were the pec major and lat dorsi. But with the adduction, it was flip-flopped. So the pec major and lats were the prime movers and the antagonists were deltoids. So if you have opposite movements, typically you see that pattern where if you have one movement and then you have the opposite movement, the antagonists and prime movers would be flip-flopped because they are opposites, and prime movers and antagonists by definition oppose each other. Okay, so then back to these opposite roles. So here we have elbow flexion. Now here we start here with your arm, or she's still kind of flexing over here, but pretend you're starting off with it fully relaxed. But you curl up these weights and bring them closer to your shoulder. So the prime mover or agonist, well, most studies, or I should say most references I've seen, say that the brachialis is the prime mover toward that, but I think the Martini book might say biceps brachii. So this is kind of debated. At least if you're taking my course, just know that there is a debate, and they're both at the anterior rears. So either one of them, they're both contributing toward the curling and flexing of your elbow joint. The antagonist, the triceps brachii we covered earlier. And Synergist. So again, if a book considers the brachialis the prime mover, it's going to consider the biceps brachii as a synergist. That helps with it, but it's just not as strong. Same with if they consider this the prime mover, they'll probably say brachialis. There's also another muscle called the brachioradialis that helps with that as well. And fixators, there are like several of them, so that's why I'm only talking about like one fixator. So again, this is why I don't have you memorize all these lists at the beginning when you're just learning out the muscles. First you need to know what these muscles are before you actually break it down into, okay, what are the prime movers, antagonists, synergists, and fixators. But I'm just giving examples here. Alright, so synergists and fixators, so sometimes references differ, just like that previous thing with elbow flexion, whether something is actually a prime mover or a synergist. And the thing is that makes it further complicated is that sometimes the movement can have several synergists or sometimes dozens of synergists and or fixators. That's why I think you should study the muscles first before you worry about details like this. Okay, so we talked about synergists. They help along with the movement, but what about fixators? They seem kind of, it might seem hard to grasp at first, but here, think about it this way. So fixators, they might not help in the same direction as movement, but they help stabilize the joint and the movement. So, and by stabilizing it, they make the lever more stable and easier so that there's like less wasted force if a muscle contracts. Now, in terms of that, but if you didn't have fixators, let's give an example. So here we have, like, if you've done this in like PE, physical education class, at least like here in these States, is that here is sit-up, and it's a lot easier when you have someone bracing your ankles, like here in the sit-up right here, because you're flexing your abs and abdominal muscles. But what if you didn't have that fixators and you had your muscles, instead of like on the ground, you had it up like this? Which is harder, this movement or this movement? And look at this, you can see a lot more movement, like the hip is relatively stable over here. But over here we have like a lot of movement, he's still pretty fit, but compared to here, where it's stabilized, notice that it's a lot less stable here, and this is generally harder than this movement over there. So this is how fixators help. By making a joint stable, it helps make movement easier and more efficient. And so thing is that my shoulders are like my weak point, they're pretty small. And I also had and it's kind of like when I was really more serious about weight training, is that I had a hard time getting my shoulders to grow and even just get stronger. But things that I talked to my personal trainer friend, and he knows that I'm kind of pec dominant when I do a shoulder press. Like, shoulder presses are great for building shoulders, but he noticed that when I did it, I was often using the upper part of my pecs. So he said, one of the greatest tips he gave me is that he told me, when I'm doing shoulder press, pull my shoulder blades back and down as much as possible. But I'm like, wait, Ben, this is before I knew more about muscles, but I'm like, okay, wait, I'm working my shoulders and pecs, but you're asking me to work the back of my body? But what he was telling me to do is that he was actually having me pull it, stabilize things by fixate that joint, shoulder joint, but also it's really hard to move this right here if you have your back muscles, your rhomboids, and all your lats engaged. And then, so I felt it a lot more in my shoulders because I was kind of like preventing my pecs from moving. So this is how I got better. I got stronger with my delts and my shoulders with the military press by engaging the fixators. Even though they're not directly involved, they help make that movement, or like shift the weight and the stress and the tension toward my deltoids instead of my upper pecs. All right, so those were fixate. So again, in terms of memorizing those long lists, in my class, beginning A&P class, I won't ask you to memorize these lists for all these movements, but you should be able to define these terms. And in these examples, I gave very specific examples. So if you're taking my course, be able to kind of like say, okay, is this muscle helping with the movement as a prime mover, or is it synergist, or is it not helping but not the main force behind it? Is it opposing the movement, or is it a fixator that doesn't quite directly participate, but it does help stabilize the joint?